It is Saturday the 5th of September, and it is a week since the massive event in London protesting about the taking away of our natural rights and freedoms under the guise of this ridiculous COVID-19 narrative that is just going on and on and on. Happily, there are signs that the wheels are continuing to fall off the whole scamdemic, and it's becoming more and more transparent to anyone with two eyes to see and a mind to think that the whole thing is a monumental scam. But the event in London was on a pretty large scale. Evidently, there were a number of other events happening on the same date, the 29th of August, most notably a big protest rally demo in Berlin, following on from the one of a few weeks ago, where in excess of 1 million people were reportedly in attendance. That's about the same number as would have attended Notting Hill Carnival in London last weekend had that gone on. Instead, we got a virtual version of Carnival. How thrilling, looking at all that stuff on a screen. Just what we need, right? But anyway, the London event attracted somewhere in the region, I would say, of 30,000, probably in excess of 30,000. It's reckoned that Trafalgar Square was full to capacity when the speeches were taking place there, and that place holds in excess of 30,000 people when it's full. So I would say we were closer to about 35k. Now, the mainstream media were always going to do one of two things. They were either going to completely ignore the event and pretend it just didn't happen, or they were going to report on it and they were going to put their own treacherous spin and slant on it, as they've done so many times in the past. So the latter option is the one that was chosen, and of course the protesters were framed in all these mainstream so-called newspapers as anti-maskers, anti-vaxxers, COVID deniers. You know, these phrases have become new buzzwords, and they've joined the likes of anti-Semite and homophobe and Holocaust denier and all these other phrases that are used to shut down an argument, which they know can't be won. So the easiest thing is just to brand these people as inhuman monsters and shut the whole discussion down there. So the media did their usual job of portraying us in that way, those of us that were in attendance. But anyone that was there will be aware that it was a very different scenario. So I found the event to be hugely inspiring. There was definitely an uplifting energy in Trafalgar Square as the speeches took place. You know, David Icke spoke, Piers Corbyn, and people are probably aware that Piers Corbyn got arrested after the event by the Metropolitan Police, and he's done a couple of interviews since saying that he suspects London Mayor Sadiq Khan may have been behind the decision to get him arrested for allegedly organising this event through his Stand Up X group. So Piers Corbyn was taken off to jail for a few hours and then released. It's far from the first time that he's been arrested. Other than that, there were many other inspiring speeches in Trafalgar Square, and then the crowd moved as a rally, as a march, going all the way down Whitehall to Downing Street, outside, of course, the home of the Prime Minister. I doubt he was actually there, but, further speeches and further demos took place there. One thing I did notice is that the police were out in massive force on the day. Apart from anything else, there was a helicopter buzzing overhead of the crowd in Trafalgar Square, and the noise of the engine was completely drowning out the noise of the speakers, the sound of the speakers coming through the PA system. So that was probably part of the plan. It's intimidation tactics, but also it was preventing a lot of people from being able to hear what many of the speakers were saying. Then we had ranks and ranks of cops just standing there in their high-vis yellow jackets, and one thing I noticed was that they were all masked up. They're all wearing rather fetching blue masks as part of their uniform, and this will undoubtedly be down to the comments that the Chief of Police, Cressida Dick, what's in her name? We have Johnson, Hancock and Dick running the show. What could possibly go wrong? So Cressida Dick a few weeks ago made the comment, the very provocative, controversial comment, that people who don't wear masks in public should be shamed and should be called out by those that do, because they're somehow helping to spread the virus and we're doing great harm, according to her. So I guess it would have been rather hypocritical, and it wouldn't have suited the narrative, her having made that comment, if all the cops in attendance at the London event were there maskless, as they have been on all previous occasions. So they're all masked up, obviously under instruction. The police at the Birmingham demo that I was at 2 weeks ago weren't wearing masks. I was also at the Bristol event last Sunday, the 30th of August, and police weren't wearing masks there either. So this is obviously a PR stunt in line with the way the whole narrative is being presented. So I met many like-minded people on the day. Lots of networking was done, lots of fellowship and camaraderie was enjoyed, and there was a great energy among the people in attendance. It was entirely peaceful. We were making a point, making a statement to anyone who was watching that we do not consent to being lied and deceived and being given bad science and having all our rights and freedoms taken away as a result of all of this. So I left that day pretty much buzzing on something of a high. I do want to talk further about the London event, but it might be good at this point to take a look at a snippet of footage from David Icke's speech at the Trafalgar Square event. Now, whatever people think of David Icke, and I know everyone's got an opinion, I don't think it can be denied that this was an incredibly moving and powerful speech, and it certainly whipped up the energy levels in the crowd and made some very good points. So let's take a look at this first.
What a joy it is to look out upon an island of sanity in a world of madness. We gather here today because a dangerous disease, a deadly disease, is sweeping across this land and across this world. And it's not COVID-19, it is fascism. Fascism justified by the illusion pandemic of COVID-19. A virus, I must give it credit, is so well equipped for every eventuality. You must not go nearer than 6 feet to another person to protect you from the virus. So now it's got a bloody tape measure.
So as I mentioned, there were also several events all over Europe with a similar aim, making similar statements and messages, and the biggest one by far was in Berlin, where Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was among the speakers, delivering a very rousing talk to the crowd there. So let's take a little look at what happened when Bobby Kennedy Jr. addressed the crowd in Berlin.
Governments love pandemics.
Regierungen lieben Pandemien.
They love pandemics for the same reason they love war.
Und die lieben sie aus den gleichen Gründen, wie sie den Krieg lieben.
Because it gives them the ability to impose controls on the population that the population would otherwise never accept.
Weil es sie in die Lage versetzt, Kontrollmechanismen zu installieren, die wir sonst niemals akzeptieren würden.
To create institutions and mechanisms for orchestrating and imposing obedience.
Das sind Institutionen und Mechanismen, die unsere Unterwürfigkeit erfordern.
Now I'll tell you something. It's a mystery to me. And all of these big important people like Bill Gates and Tony Fauci have been planning and thinking about this pandemic for decades. Planning it so that we would all be safe when the pandemic finally came. And yet, now that it's here, they don't seem to know what they're talking about.
So some good and positive things are happening. If you only looked at the doom-laden alternative media, so you get the mind control and the propaganda from the mainstream, but with so many facets of the alternative media, all you get is 500 different ways every week in which your life is fucked and you have no future. Because there seems to be this obsession with communicating to people how devastating and draconian things are, and many facets of the alternative media sadly seem to get off on telling you this and being the first to announce just what a nightmare the world is going to turn into. But there is good out there, and there has to be, because we live in a world of duality. This physical reality in which we find ourselves is built on opposing values and dynamics with everything. So For male, there's female. For night, there's day. For up, there's down. For on, there's off, etc. And so if there is great evil in the world, it stands to reason that there has to be forces of good to balance it out at the opposite end of the scale. So when we see expressions of evil, and evil appears to be running the show and winning the day, we have to keep in mind that good is always out there, and the potential to tap into it is always there. Evil does not have the monopoly on the situations we undergo. It can seem like it does, because collectively humanity fell asleep at the wheel a very long time ago and allowed these forces to become the dominant ones in our experienced reality. But at any time we can tap into those opposing forces of good and godliness and right action and ensure that that's the dominant emotion and spiritual state in the narrative. So, for every evil there's a force of good, and we need to keep that in mind. So I'm sure many people like me were inspired by the incredible energy around last weekend. Unfortunately, here we are a few days later, and I have to report that there's been some fallout from the London event, tragically, devastatingly, perhaps predictably. What I've been hearing over the past couple of days is a lot of ego-based infighting, division and falling out among various individuals and various organisations. I'm not going to get into the fine detail, and I'm not going to name names because I don't want to get embroiled in all the petty politics of the situation. But I'm hearing stories of certain people wanting to claim the credit for organising the event or being the prominent voice or the prominent organisation behind it. Other people involved are taking objection to that, and they're going back and forth, arguing with each other. Again, it's all ego-based. And it's what we've seen so many times expressed in this so-called truth movement, so-called scene, where people just don't seem to be able to move beyond the ego, all the things that afflict regular members of society, and we deride them for their consciousness being so degraded, and we like to think of ourselves as far superior to them in terms of how we perceive and view the world. And yet so many of us are not able to move beyond the base consciousness and the default human characteristics that are present in regular members of society. So we've got all this going back and forth and slanging matches online and stuff, and it's so disappointing to see right now, at a time when more than any other we need unity, and we need people who have figured out what's going on to stand shoulder to shoulder with each other, collectively putting resistance out there and pushing back against the tyranny. When has there ever been a time where that's been needed more? And yet, even in these circumstances, certain people don't seem to be able to move beyond these ego-based states of mind and states of spirituality, or lack of it. So it's been hugely disappointing to see that. I've stayed outside of it. I hope that things can move on from that. There is another big event planned in London, in Trafalgar Square, kicking off at midday at the end of this month, Saturday the 26th of September. I truly hope that all the politics and all the bickering and all the bullshit and all the going back and forth can have been squashed by that point, and that those involved will have found a way to unite and get on the same page. We share a common enemy, all of us, and we've seen this year that our enemy is capable of organising itself, and the various factions of that force are able to come together and join in the common aims and objectives that they have, and yet we seem to be unable to achieve that. And a mantra, a chant that was heard many times in London last weekend is "We are the 99%, a reminder of this numbers game where a ridiculously small amount of people are controlling the vast overwhelming majority of humanity. And yet we may well be the 99%, but we don't seem capable of illustrating that by all coming together and supporting each other and putting aside all these differences and all these petty bickerings. All that shit can wait till later. When we've won back our freedom, we can worry about the fine detail of who should take credit for what and who's better than who and who's putting out information on what platform. Does any of that stuff really matter in current circumstances? So that's been a very disappointing thing that I've witnessed this week, and we'll see how it pans out, but, you know, not a good situation, folks. Not good that we don't seem to be able to move beyond this, and we don't seem to have learnt many of the lessons that have been waiting to be taught along the way. There have been a few little glimmers of hope. I always try and find faint expressions of positivity in any given week when I can. There was a story this week about factions within the French military who are apparently calling out the whole COVID-19 scamdemic as exactly that, what it is. A hoax and a psyop to control and subjugate the whole of humanity. So that's pretty promising. That was reported on a French media platform. We'll see where that story goes. It's just a shame that we don't see similar pushback from the military and indeed the police here in the UK. There seem to be more doctors and more medical professionals slowly coming forward with their stories, with their accounts on the bad science that we're being fed about the virus and about vaccines. There have been some nurses coming forward. News this week of a couple of nurses who have lost their jobs in the UK as a result of expressing their opinion and making their thoughts and comments known on social media. I suppose we shouldn't be too surprised at that kind of outcome. It does kind of tend to reinforce the notion that this whole thing is a massive scam and that the controllers of it are panicking about the truth getting out, and they're really closing ranks and doing whatever they feel they need to prevent that truth from being expressed. I hear that Vernon Coleman, who has been a hero to many through the last few weeks, so many people have been finding great truth and comfort and reassurance and strength from the messages Vernon Coleman has been putting out. He's really made a name for himself. He has announced that he's going to stop doing YouTube videos now. He's reached a point where he doesn't feel he can achieve anything more on that. But he's left people with the mind-boggling offer of a prize of £100,000 from his own pocket to the creators of the COVID-19 vaccine, which I guess is going to be the next stage in the narrative in terms of what they're going to try and achieve as the autumn and the winter draw in and more people go down with colds and flus and various other diseases that always occur at this time of year, and they damn well know it. Of course, these are all going to be attributed to a second wave of COVID, and we're going to be told that the virus has got out of control again and the case figures have gone through the roof. And that's when the calls for the vaccine will of course come in. Those of us that have been following this narrative all along know what the game plan is. It's very transparent. But Vernon Coleman, on a YouTube video that he put out just yesterday, the 4th of September, stated, "I am prepared to bet Dr. Whitty and Dr. Fauci £100,000 that they cannot provide independent clinical evidence proving beyond doubt that the COVID-19 vaccine and the newly promoted flu vaccine will be 100% effective and 100% safe, not just now but in the long term. If they have the courage to take on the bet, I will share my winnings with groups and websites campaigning for the truth. If they won't take on the bet, then we will know that they believe that any new flu or COVID-19 vaccine will not be 100% effective or 100% safe in the short and long term. Let's put a finish date of 31st of December 2020 for the bet." So that's what he's put out there. I think we can probably guess what the response is going to be. It's going to be similar to these legal challenges that have been launched against the government by the likes of Keep Britain Free, and the Coronavirus Act 2020 is null and void, and the common law suit that I hear has been served against the UK government as well. All of these just seem to be ignored. They're just acting like they never occurred, and they're not addressing them in any way. I was kind of hoping that the common law situation might be a route that we could collectively go down and that would yield some results. We'll have to see how that one pans out again. Anyone that is informed in the common law situation when it comes to constitutional matters and such, and how what's being done to us is in total breach of that, is welcome to get in touch to shed some more light on the subject. I know there were a couple of speakers there in attendance at Bristol, or a couple of people who didn't get to speak actually at the Bristol protest event last Sunday, that were talking about the common law route as one to go down. I really hope that might still be an option, because we could use all the options we can get. What else is going on? Is there anything else positive that I wanted to mention? There probably is, but at this stage, I think it's worth reiterating the new mantra that I advocated a few weeks ago in one of these videos, back in the spring I think it was, where I became so sick of having certain words and phrases ringing around my head the whole time. Every time I close my eyes to try and go to sleep or get a moment of rest, I would have words like coronavirus and COVID and pandemic just going round and round in my head, because of the way they're constantly repeated, hypnotic-like, in the mainstream media and in people's conversations in everyday society. And I suggested that we come up with a new mantra and some new words to kind of overwrite all the mind control that comes from the ones we have drummed into us. And I came up with this: truth, freedom, justice, love, which is my new mantra. Those words carry a lot of energy, and they're charged with a lot of vibrational potency in terms of what they stand for and what they speak to. And so I kind of chant these words over and over in my mind to myself when I find I'm getting overwhelmed with this mainstream narrative and I've got all this stuff swimming around in my head that I just want to get rid of. Truth, freedom, justice, love. Some very powerful statements, some very powerful expressions. And I think if many of us got behind the sentiments behind those words and kept them in mind and focused our will and intent and cast our affirmation, our wish out there into creation for these dynamics to be the overriding ones in this whole narrative, there could be some value in that. Just a suggestion. I know Vernon Coleman's mantra of distrust the government, avoid mass media, fight the lies has become very popular as a mantra as well. And of course that's also a good one. And also just a mention of another tactic that I suggested a few weeks ago, the reasons to be cheerful, based around the song by Ian Dury and the Blockheads. What I advocated was, when we find ourselves overwhelmed with anxiety and we're just getting completely bogged down in all the mind control and the propaganda, and it's doing our heads in. We all have days like this. You know, I've mentioned that I go through all kinds of emotional states, and people get in touch with me all the time to say it's exactly the same for them. They have good days, they have bad days, they have days where they veer from one emotion to the other in the course of a few hours. But what I suggested to people a while back was that we keep focused on things that we can still feel positive about in our own lives, in our own personal situations. And many of these can be very trivial. They can seem quite trivial and meaningless to anyone looking on, but to us they do have some value, and they mean something to us. And so I suggested making a list of reasons to be cheerful. It can be something like a social occasion you have lined up. You're going to go and see somebody, a member of your family or a friend, or you've got something lined up on a social basis there. Some other event that you might be attending, something else that you're looking forward to that you've got in the diary, some particular occasion. It can be just counting your blessings for the things that you still have. You know, your health, your family, your circle of family and friends around you, the fact that you've got a home, the fact that you're not yet in abject poverty, the fact that things could be a whole lot worse. And when we look around at what's happening in the world, we realise there are always people in worse situations than us. And it can help to keep those things in mind, to keep a perspective on things when we get reflective and we go really soul searching. So I think people will still find value in these reasons to be cheerful, and it's a small piece of advice, but it's one that people may choose to take up. So the COVID-19 Truth Tour is underway, and this is pretty much a creation of the Event 202 team. And the idea is that there's a tour bus. It's a bit like a rock group on tour. It's going around different towns and cities in the UK all through the month of September. So there's dates in England, it's touching a couple of dates in Wales, and it's going up to Scotland for, I think, 3 dates. Each date kicks off at 12 midday, and there are various speakers on each leg that are putting out information similar to what we had presented at the London and Bristol events last weekend. So they're on a smaller scale. They're going to sort of town, city centre squares and, you know, places in the centre of these locations, and just hoping to draw a crowd. I think the main value of these events is trying to get through to normies, regular members of society who might be feeling a bit overwhelmed and a bit bewildered by everything that they're being hammered with in the mainstream media. Maybe they've got a sneaky suspicion that there's more to this than they're being told, but they haven't yet embarked on the path to researching it fully. And all they need is that little nudge and that little push to get them in, going in that direction. So I think the value of this truth tour touching down in all these places is in trying to get through to these people who, at 12 midday each day, they're going to be going about their business on their lunch break, doing some shopping, going from place to place. And it's an ideal potential opportunity to reach a large number of people all over the land and give them some truth to counter all the propaganda, spin and lies that they're inevitably getting from the mainstream media. So I'm going to post a link to the flyer for the COVID-19 Truth Tour in the show notes below, and that will enable you to see where this event is touching down between now and the end of the month. So it all culminates in London on the 26th of September, another big rally in Trafalgar Square, and then marching to Whitehall. Really hope all these petty differences and all this ego-based nonsense could have been put to bed by that point. It would be great if the event on the 26th of this month is even larger in scale than the one in August and achieves even more in terms of getting through to new people and pushing back and showing some resistance from the 99%, as we keep reminding ourselves that's what we are. Then on the 27th of September, the Sunday, there's an event kicking off in Hyde Park. I think it's Speaker's Corner at Hyde Park, and it's going to be of a similar nature with another march going on from that. So that's the COVID-19 Truth Tour. If you can get along to any of the dates, please do show your support. We need any opportunities we can to counter the mainstream narrative on this and get the alternative information out there. So I think this is a pretty good idea that people should get behind if they can. I think that's pretty much it for this week. We'll see how everything pans out. As I've said so many times, it's a case of taking one day at a time. Lots of scare stories around, lots of propaganda and speculation and personal opinion as to what the control system's next step is going to be, what kind of stunts they're going to try and pull as we move into autumn. The truth is, none of us know for sure how this is going to pan out. We can have our opinions, we can have our suggestions, but other than that, it is a case of waiting to see, because things change every day and it's impossible to know what the long-term outcome is going to be. We just have to keep the effort stepped up, as I say every time, and make sure that the outcome we do all see from this is the one that we would wish for, and one that benefits all of humanity, and one that sees the downfall and the final destruction of this evil cabal, this control system that seeks to enslave and subjugate us, and has done for a very long time. And there's every evidence to suggest that they see this as them putting the final pieces of the puzzle in place. This to them is the end game, and they've shown their hand. To my thinking, they have illustrated that they are panicking. They don't feel they've got that much time left to get everything achieved, because they're seeing signs of so many people now getting wise to what's being done. So it's not characteristic of them to throw everything they've got at us in the way that they have this year. Normally they take their time, normally they roll things out in slow incremental steps so that it's not so easy to spot patterns and realise what's going on, but this is not their usual modus operandi. So let's draw some optimism and hope from the fact that they do appear to be panicking. Let's keep them on the run. I want to leave you with a few words from myself, which I delivered at the event in Bristol last weekend. This was in Castle Park. It was a beautiful sunny day, great crowd in attendance. Bit disappointed that the numbers weren't higher. I would have hoped to have seen more people coming out and showing their support for what we were doing in Bristol. So it certainly could have been a larger scale event. But for the people that were there, there was a great energy, there was a good buzz, people enjoyed being in each other's company, and hopefully with the march that we did through the city centre after the event in the park, we did get through to many a trembling masked normie who were looking pretty bewildered and wondering what was going on. I hope we caused a few of them to question what they're being told and the efficacy of masks and all of this, and maybe cause them to do some critical thinking. Who knows? So I'll leave you with a few of my words from Castle Park, Bristol last Sunday. I got very fired up. I took some swipes at the treacherous, disgusting mainstream media, because I was getting very pissed off with all the lies and all the spin and all the propaganda that so many people are still buying into. So I'll leave you with this, and I'll catch you again next time. Hope these videos are still of value to people. I do get a lot of feedback, a lot of emails every week from people telling me that they continue to find value in my thoughts and reflections. That's really why I keep doing these. You know, there's no ego. I don't particularly feel compelled to get up here in front of the camera every weekend and speak the way I do. I do it because people tell me that they find value in it, and people ask me to continue, and they tell me that they share my stuff as widely as possible with other people that need to hear it. So, you know, I serve truth and I serve creation, and I see it as a personal responsibility to continue putting these messages out. Personally, I would prefer not to do it, but I will do it if this can be my contribution and my way of participating in the process that needs to happen. We can all bring something to the table. I guess this is my own personal, participation. So I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.
Think of the regulations that were brought in the wake of 9/11. All the ridiculous rituals you go through at airports now. Putting your little shampoo in little bottles, you know, because you can't have big bottles of liquid going through the X-ray machine. All of this stuff was introduced 19 years ago, and there's no sign of it being rolled back. So none of this is going to be rolled back until we make them stop. They're not going to stop until we make them stop. And that's what we're going to do.
Yes! Woo!
Another quote. This one came from George H.W. Bush. It was given to a journalist, Sarah McClendon, in an interview where he said, "Sarah, if the American people," and you can apply that to people anywhere in the world, "ever find out what we have done, they would chase us down the street and lynch us." Meaning they know that the minute enough of us figure out what they've been doing to us, and the fact that the power lies with us and we have the numbers, is game over for them. They know this. We have to make that happen. Nobody's going to do it but us. The time is now. If not now, then when? If not you, then who? We won't get another chance like this. Thank you.
Woo! Amazing! Woo!
Thank you.
Thank you. What a joy it is to look out upon an island of sanity in a world of madness. We gather here today because a dangerous disease, a deadly disease, is sweeping across this land and across this world. And it's not COVID-19, it is fascism. Fascism justified by the illusion pandemic of COVID-19. A virus, I must give it credit, is so well equipped for every eventuality. You must not go nearer than 6 feet to another person to protect you from the virus. So now it's got a bloody tape measure. must not stay with anyone outside your bubble for more than 15 minutes. Now it's got a bloody watch. And we are going to make masks mandatory, but not until the end of next week. Now it's got a bloody calendar. We have a virus so intelligent that it only infects those taking part in protests the government wants to stop. Why is it nonsense? Why can anyone with half a brain cell on activity see or active duty see that it's a nonsense? Because they are making it up. So why? Why are they doing that? Well, I can answer that with another point, another question. How could I have predicted current events decades ago? How could Aldous Huxley have done it in the 1930s? How can George Orwell have done it in the 1940s? Simple. Current events are not random. They have not just happened. We are seeing a long planned agenda rolling out in a script. And it is destined, if we do not stand up now, to end with the total global subjugation of the human race, not least technologically. We now are standing at an amazing point in history where we are at a fork in the road. If we go on allowing the psychopaths to dictate our lives, this is not going to end well. But if we remember where the power is, then this can end in a dramatically short time. The power is with us. Percy Shelley understood this when he wrote 200 years ago his oh so appropriately named The Mask of Anarchy. Rise like lions after slumber, in unvanquishable number. Shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep have fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few. And those words were written in 1819, and so much of humanity still has not learned the lesson. This whole subjugation and imposition of fascism on the human race worldwide is being run not by health professionals even, but by psychologists. Just down the road there, yards from where we are, is the British government's Cabinet Office owned private company called the Behavioural Insights Team. And its job is simply to study human psychology and then to play out what it's learned to remodify the behaviour of the population. And they are focusing on our kids more than anyone. What they don't want us to know, the biggest mind trick they play on us, is this. They want us to believe that authority has power. Authority has no power. Authority's power the world over is only our power which we give to them. When thousands of people headed to the beaches a few weeks ago, there was no chance of unsocial distancing. So they were sitting together in their thousands. The local authority declared a major incident. Okay, declare it. But what are you going to do about it? Nothing. Well, there's nothing we can do, is there? There's too many people that won't obey. Exactly. This world is controlled by a tiny few people because of a simple sequence of imposition and acquiescence. All the way down the pyramid, imposition, acquiescence. The next level acquiesces and imposes on the next level, and then it goes down to us, the people. And if we acquiesce to that level of the hierarchy that seeks to impose on us, i.e. government, police, then we complete a circuit between the tiny few in the shadows and the entire global population. And that circuit means that a tiny few impose their agenda on billions of people. How do we break that sequence? We stop acquiescing. Human race, get off your knees! The lion sleeps no more! Stay in your homes! No! Wear a mask! No! Let your kids be psychologically dismantled! No! It is time, it is well past the time where we learn the lessons of history. The entirety of human history is one of the few controlling the many, because the many acquiesce to the few. Enough! Freedom! Nothing less. And I say to the police officers that are policing this, you have children, you have grandchildren. And you are enforcing the fascism which your own children and grandchildren will have to live with. Join us, for goodness sake, and stop serving the psychopaths. There are billions of us at the core of this psychopathic web. You would get them in one room. I think I can see a way out of this. Come on, people of the world, let's go!